Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. How would you describe yourself? Are you always late, a type A person, or maybe just a bad writer? From where did these ideas come? A teacher who makes you feel bad about yourself, a group of friends who call you names, or maybe even yourself? Everyone has an idea of what kind of person they are. Some of these are good for moving forward and making changes, and some are bad. We tell stories to figure out what's going on in the world, but sometimes we make ourselves the bad guy without giving it much thought. So get out your editing pen, because it's time to make some changes. You'll learn how hypnosis affects everyone, how you can practice the piano in your head, and why you might not be a bad math student after all. Every person has a self-image, which is a mental blueprint of who she is. This very important idea of self is made up of the things she thinks about herself based on her past successes and failures. These ideas are important because people act like the person they think they are. If you think you're a failure, you probably will be. On the other hand, if you think you are successful, you will find ways to be successful. But why do we have these self-images that shape our lives in the first place? Well, there's usually a good reason for it. Someone might feel like a failure if she had a bad year in school after her parents split up. Some people can quickly get back on the honor roll after something like this, but others get stuck in a self-image that tells them they're the type of student who gets Fs. In this way, whether a person has a good or bad self-image is important for everything else that happens in their life. Here's another example. The author knew a man who hated the way he looked because he thought his nose was too big and his ears were too big. He felt bad because he thought people were judging him because of how he looked. In reality, though, no one was judging him based on how he looked. Instead, it was his own bad view of himself that made him feel so insecure and unhappy. In this case, he was mean to others because he thought they were mean to him. But he could get out of this loop if he changed how he thought about himself. You might think of hypnosis as a trick for a weird circus show. But every person can be hypnotized in some way. After all, belief is what gives hypnosis its power, and you already know how strong beliefs can be. Just look at Dr. Alfred Adler, a friend of the author, who was bad at math in school and made his teacher think he wasn't good at it. Adler thought this was true, and his grades showed that his teacher was right. But one day, all of a sudden, he figured out how to solve a hard equation. When he showed his teacher how to solve the problem, he saw that he was good at math. Soon, he felt better about himself, and he got better at math. What's different? A false idea about himself had Adler under its spell. Studies have shown that Adler's situation is typical of many students who don't do well in school. People are hypnotized by both positive and negative beliefs in the same way, so the goal is to get past the ideas that hold us back. To do this, you only need to use the power of your mind. Your negative beliefs are not based on facts or experiences, but on what you think those things mean. So, logical, conscious thinking like rational thinking can be used to control your unconscious mind. Ask why? To start pulling out the beliefs that make you feel like you're not good enough. If you do this, you'll be less likely to think things like, I failed yesterday, so I'll fail again today. When you have this kind of thought, you'll be able to see that every day is a chance to learn from the past. People often say that the body is like a machine, which isn't too far from the truth. Even though people are not machines in and of themselves, each of us has a machine that we can use when we need to. The author calls this kind of behavior psycho-cybernetics. This is a way of thinking about the brain and nervous system as a servo mechanism or automatic response that uses negative feedback to help it figure out what to do next. Cybernetics, which is the study of machines and mechanics, is the basis for this theory. Psycho-cybernetics can help us learn more about why and how people act the way they do. One of these is that people have a built-in way to be successful. Think about how a baby might try to get hold of a rattle. He can't remember anything from what he has done in the past. So, he has to move his hand back and forth to reach the object. Once he gets the toy, or gets a good response, he will store the memory for future use. He can get better at grasping over time by remembering his successes and forgetting his failures. In the same way, this type of success mechanism is at work when we try to reach our goals. Obviously, turning on this mechanism is a good thing, and to start, we need to use our imagination. The nervous system of a person can't tell the difference between real and imagined experiences. Because of this, it acts based on what we think or imagine to be true. In the 1950s, Dr. Theodore Xenophon Barber did research at American University in Washington. He found that telling hypnotized people they couldn't feel pain made it easy for them to go through surgery without anesthesia. Or think about Arthur Schnabel, a world-famous concert pianist who rarely practiced on a real piano. He would instead just work on his art in his head. A darts player and a golfer are also examples of people who got better at their sports by working on their minds. When working on a creative project, it's common to run into problems, like writer's block or a stuck brainstorming session. Most creative people know that when they hit a block like this, all they can do is chill out and wait for inspiration to come back. This makes perfect sense, since people have a very specific way of coming up with ideas. It doesn't start working until we want to solve a problem, think about it consciously, and gather all the information we can about it. When we've tried hard enough to solve a problem, we reach a point where more thinking only holds us back. Then our natural urge to be creative starts to work. So, we come up with our best ideas when we aren't working. Take Thomas Edison, a well-known inventor. He would take a short nap whenever he ran into a problem he couldn't solve. After these short breaks, he often found the answer he was looking for. So, creativity isn't always there, but we can bring it back by changing what we do and how we think. And the same is true for being happy. This is how most people think about what they will do in the future to be happy. We think we'll be happy when we get married or get a better job. But you can only be happy in the present. First, we have to understand that happiness is a completely internal feeling that comes from our thoughts and how we feel about them. If a driver honks at us and makes us unhappy, it's because we chose to react with irritation and frustration, which takes away our happiness. We can make happiness a habit by focusing on the good things and letting go of the bad. Another great example is Edison. Once, a fire destroyed his $1 million lab, and he didn't have insurance to pay for it. Still, he chose to avoid being unhappy and started rebuilding the first thing the next morning. You can't just find success, just like you can't just arrive at failure. Rather, your failures and successes come from forces that are deep within you. Both come from different sets of things. First, you'll learn about the acronym SUCCESS, which stands for the most important traits of a successful person. First, you need to know where you're going. After all, every person wants to reach a goal, and just like a mountain climber, you need something to aim for. When you get to the top, you should just keep going to the next peak. Understanding is the second trait. Most mistakes happen because people don't understand what's going on because they are afraid, anxious, or want something. Just imagine you see two coworkers talking to each other. As soon as you walk by, they stop talking and look up. It would be easy to think that they were talking about you, but that's probably not the case. It's just one example of how you feel can change what you see. Courage is the third thing you need to be successful. After all, you can't make your dreams come true without being brave. You have to have the guts to stand behind your ideas by taking calculated risks. If you wait to act until you're sure of everything, you'll never get anything done. Charity is the fourth trait, because successful people care about the problems, needs, dignity, and respect of all people. Fifth is self-respect, because if you always say, "I can't do it," you'll never get anywhere. So, having a low opinion of yourself is never a good thing. Instead, it is a threat to your success. Sixth is being sure of yourself. This feeling comes from having done well in the past, so it's important to remember your successes and forget your failures, which could hurt your confidence. And finally, the last key to success is to accept yourself. You'll never get what you want until you accept yourself, including your flaws and weaknesses. A successful personality has these 7 parts. Next, you'll find out about the 7 things that make people fail. An acronym of the word failure makes it easy to remember the things that lead to failure. The first step is frustration, which happens when you feel like you can't reach a big goal. This makes you more likely to fail because you think you can't do it, which makes you more likely to fail. The next trait is aggression. This energy can help you reach your goals, but if you have a failure-type personality, all that aggression goes toward bad habits like worrying and being rude instead of a good goal. Third is feeling insecure or like you don't live up to expectations. Surprisingly, insecurity is often not caused by a real lack of skills but by a flawed way of judging them. In other words, you'll never feel confident about yourself if you compare yourself to an ideal that doesn't exist and is probably impossible to reach. Fourth on the list is loneliness, which is the feeling of being cut off from other people. People who are lonely cut themselves off from the paths that could lead to a good social life, don't act, and have to work hard to get what they want. Uncertainty or not making any decisions at all to avoid making mistakes is the 5th trait of people who fail. It's not taking action to reach your goals because you think you shouldn't try if you're not sure you'll succeed. Since there is no sure way, there is no decision to be made, and you are safe from failure or success. 6th is resentment, which is an attempt to make personal failure easier to deal with by saying that it was caused by unfair treatment. The last one is emptiness, which is a sign of failure. This feeling comes from thinking that life is dull and that nothing is worth working for. If you have any of the above qualities, it's time to make a change. Next, you'll find out exactly how to do it. When you get hurt, your body makes a scar to protect the area that was hurt. In this way, scar tissue is nature's way of stopping the same place from getting hurt again. In the same way, people often make emotional scars to protect themselves from hurt feelings. But these scars don't just keep you safe from the person who hurt you in the first place. They can also make you different from everyone else. They build an emotional wall that keeps out both friends and enemies. You can get over this, though, by giving yourself an emotional facelift. This process is like having emotional surgery, but instead of a scalpel, your main tool is forgiveness. Like a sharp tool used in surgery, real forgiveness can cut through old hurts and let healing happen. But to really forgive, you have to forget that you were wronged and even the fact that you are forgiving. Then, once you've healed from your emotional wounds, you can show your true self, which comes from inside. Many people have personalities that hold them back from being creative and letting their true selves shine through. As an example, inhibition is often the cause of stuttering. This speech problem is caused by too much self-monitoring, which gives the person too much negative feedback. It's a good example of how limiting it can be to worry too much about what other people think and want from you. Disinhibition is what you need to do to get past this crippling feeling. People often say that you should think before you speak, but the truth is that you should do the opposite. By speaking before you think, you can get rid of self-conscious thoughts like, should I have done that? This is the first step you need to take to really bring out your creative side. Picture yourself at home, reading a book in peace. When your phone rings, you immediately get out of your favorite chair and run to answer it. You went from being calm to being worried. Why shouldn't you? You've learned to pay attention to the ringtone. But the truth is that you don't have to answer the phone, you could just as easily ignore it. Here's the first way to get peace of mind: start ignoring the different bells that are ringing around you. This term refers to all the disruptive stimuli that populate your environment. You know what to do when you hear a bell because you have been trained to do so. For instance, parental warnings result in most children fearing strangers. While such a tendency might serve a reasonable function in kids, it gets carried over into adulthood, causing lots of people to feel uncomfortable around others they don't know. Strangers have become bells to which the learned response is fear and avoidance. However, you can overcome these conditioned responses by practicing relaxation instead. In other words, if you want to, you can learn to let the bell ring. A good way to ease into this practice is to delay your response, say by counting to 3 before answering the phone. From there you can slowly extend the time until you eventually ignore the bell altogether. Another way to achieve peace of mind is to construct a mental quiet room that offers you a retreat from the world. You can furnish it with whatever you find relaxing, maybe a beautiful landscape, or your favorite piece of art. Then, whenever you have a few moments to spare between appointments or while riding the bus, calm your mind in your quiet room. Humans may not be machines, but we can think of our mental processes as mechanized. By using cybernetic principles to understand this machine thinking, we can overcome negative ideas about ourselves, enhance our self-image and live a fulfilling, successful life. What you should do to put what you've learned to use. Use a mental picture of heaviness to relax. Sit down in a comfortable chair or lie flat on your back. Imagine that your legs are made out of concrete and envision yourself sitting or lying in place with these heavy extremities. As you sink further down into the floor or the mattress from the sheer weight of your legs, you start to release the tension in your body. For a total of 30 minutes a day, repeat this exercise with your arms, hands, neck and any other body part you want to relax. Thanks for watching.